Hi there, pre-cal students. We have a short lesson today, only two problems. It is 14-3, double angle equations with identities. So we're solving trig equations that are double angle situations. We're still dealing with radians. All our answers will be in radians. X is going to lie between 0 and 2 pi. And our first equation, number 1, says cosine of 2x is equal to cosine x. Remember that we had three formulas for cosine of 2x. One of them had just cosine squared, one of them had sine squared, and the other one had both cosine squared and sine squared. Since the other side of our equation equals cosine x here, it makes sense to use the one with cosine squared alone. So cosine of 2x equals, this is 2 cosine squared x minus 1 from a couple lessons back. 2 cosine, actually from last unit. 2 cosine squared x minus 1, and so that's equal to cosine x. We want to get this equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract that cosine x over to the left, and putting things in order here gives me 2 cosine squared x minus cosine x minus 1 equals 0. So now I've got a quadratic. If you want to, you could write this as 2k squared minus k minus 1 equals 0, where k is equal to cosine x, and solve it that way. This one though, still, should be pretty easy to solve, pretty easy to factor. The only way to get 2 cosine squared is 2 cosine x times cosine x. If I multiply those together, I get 2 cosine squared. The only way to get 1 is 1 times 1. The only question is, one of these is a positive 1 and one's a negative 1. So I'm going to put the negative over here so that when I do the outside-inside part, the outside's going to be a negative 2 cosine x. Put the positive here, the inside will be a positive 1, and that negative 2 plus 1 cosine x gives me a negative 1 cosine x there for my middle term. So that's it. The zero product property says I can split these. 2 cosine x plus 1 equals 0, or cosine x minus 1 equals 0. So I get 2 cosine x equals negative 1, and cosine x equals negative 1/2. On this one I get cosine x equals 1. So where does cosine x equal negative 1/2? Well, that's going to be in quadrants 2 or 3. And my reference angle for 1/2 in the first quadrant, that's going to be pi thirds. So in the second quadrant, that would be 2 pi thirds. And in the third quadrant, that would be 4 pi thirds. So 2 pi thirds and 4 pi thirds. Cosine x equals a positive 1. That has an answer at 0. And then a full circle around at 2 pi. So 0 and 2 pi. So I get 4 correct solutions here for this equation, cosine 2x equals cosine of x. Okay? One more. This time it's double angle with sine. Sine 2x equals 0. If you remember the formula, sine 2x equals 2 sine x cosine x. And so that equals 0. If I divide both sides by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. My 2's will cancel on the left, and now I have sine x cosine x equals 0 divided by 2 is still 0. And using the zero product property, I can say, all right, either sine x equals 0 or cosine x equals 0. So this is pretty easy. Sine is equal to 0 at 0, pi, and 2 pi. Cosine equals 0 at pi halves and 3 pi halves. So all those quadrantal angles actually would be the solution for this one. Notice that I wasn't really having to go back and check because everything, my equations are all in terms of sines and cosines. If I had tangents, cotangents, secants, cosecants, then I need to go back and check and make sure my answers work. But in these particular cases, I'm good with what I've got. All right, I hope y'all are doing well. Shoot me an email if you have any questions, and I will be talking to you later. Bye-bye.